but you came and pulled me up so I could breathe.
Welcome to Rescued for Women, where women share stories of how their messes were turned into messages of hope.
And all you did was forgive me.
Welcome back to Rescued for Women. We are so glad you joined us again. Tonight we have Jen Johnson with us sharing her story. I am so excited that you agreed to come and share. And Jen's story is one of, well, I'm just going to let you tell it. How's that? Okay, so go ahead and get started for us.
So I grew up going to church. I always went with my mom and my grandparents, and then as I got older, we kind of just stopped going. I don't really remember my dad going much because he worked 7 days a week and did a swing shift. But after we stopped going as a family, I always went with a neighbor, and I went with a friend. We went to Sunday school. My mom would just drop me off and pick me up, and so I always had people that like took me to church, but it was never like about a relationship that I have now. It was just kind of going through the motions and just going because that's what you do on Sundays. So as I reached middle school, I started to have a couple Christian friends. They invited me to youth group once, and I never went because I always walk this line like, what are non-Christian people are gonna think of me? And so I always like had God in the back of my mind just because growing up and hearing about it. But then I entered high school, and my mom allowed me to start dating. So once I turned 16, I was away from church for a little bit, but once I turned 16, I got a car and I could drive. I started going back to church with my grandparents, and because I was able to get there, and I started helping with communion and serving in the kids ministry. There was only a couple kids. It was a really small church. But I always knew in the back of my mind there was stuff that I just nothing bad. I was a straight A student. I loved school and I was like always in the books. But I knew dating wasn't a good idea, and I just made some choices in high school that weren't the best. And then around 16 or 17, the person I was with for a couple of years in high school decided they didn't want to be with me anymore, and I kind of like broke down, and then I just kept moving on to different boyfriends. So at 17, I tried to move out of my parents' house with a guy, and I always had older friends, but I always had like Christian friends too that kind of like I'd have my Christian friends on one side and I had like my older friends on the other, trying to like balance the two. And so I tried to move out at 17. Then the guy I was with was way older, and then he got abusive physically and emotionally. So I got out of that situation, and all in the back of my mind, like I always had like my Christian friends. So I was like, what I'm doing is not a good idea. So I moved back home, and the end of my high school year, um, during middle school and high school, my brother was in trouble with the law all the time, and there was always cops at our house. He was always getting suspended from school, and it was just chaos at my house. So I think I choose to like get out of the house and go be with guys because I was kind of looking for something, but I didn't really know what to do about it. So that was kind of like what led me through high school. And my mom actually never really disciplined us for stuff, and in the back of my mind I always was like, I wish my mom would discipline me so I could like be, I always like wanted disciplined. Like when I was doing it, I was like, I wish my mom would tell me not to come home this late or like do this or whatever. And because like as a child you want guidance, you want someone, even like if kids don't like it, they like
Structure.
yeah, they want structure, boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually was like in the back of my mind wanted structure. So that was kind of like up until high school. Then after high school, I left for college, and I moved out because I just like wanted to be away from the chaos that was still happening. It was never really bad, but my mom and dad fought a lot over my brother and getting in trouble, and there was always like threats of divorce. And so I would leave for a while and stay with friends and come back. So I went on to college, and for 2 years, and I decided that wasn't what I wanted, because I went because I wanted my parents to be proud of me, and it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So then I changed courses after 2 years and went to school for business. But then I met a guy. All the time I was like in and out of relationships. And then I met a new guy who I found out was an alcoholic, but stuck with him because just my personality. I'm always trying to help people, but you can't be in a relationship and help people when they don't want helped. So that's why I was kind of like in those relationships, always trying to help people, but knowing like I wasn't going to be able to help them, because you can't help someone who doesn't want help. So while I was in college, then my niece passed away from a hospital error. So I just being involved in a relationship where there was alcohol and drunk, and then my brother went through a divorce, and my niece passed away right after. I left for Florida. So I went there for almost a year for my internship for college, and came all the time. The person I was with, that was an alcoholic. We were still together, but only over the phone. We only had a phone relationship. And I decided to come back after I was finished. I bought a house. We moved in together. He had a child. We moved her in. And I became an instant mom at 22 years old. And so it was pretty rough for a while. I actually joined Mary Kay, and I had my own Mary Kay business. So that's where it started really building Christian relationships. I was always around Christian women, hearing their testimonies. I was going to retreats and conferences every 3 months. And I was always around them and their stories, and I could just start seeing that's where it really started building. I always had the foundation as a kid and as I was growing up, but this really was where I started building this desire to know the Lord. And we'd have Sunday church at our retreats and conferences, and they would say, do you want to accept Christ? And I still want to raise my hand all the time. It went on for months. I just want to raise my hand and accept Christ, but I was just too nervous what other people were going to think. So it was around November 2008. I got a job at the Hotel Hershey. I was working there for over a year, and we had some scheduling conflicts, and I got into a little spat with my manager and got fired. So it was terrible at the time, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because while I had my Mary Kay business, my friend in Mary Kay introduced me to Grace Fellowship, which is now Genesis, and she brought me there, and the pastors asked anybody if they want to accept Christ, go through the whole thing, and they said, when you raise your hand, we have something for you at the end. And I was like, oh, I'm not raising my hand because they're going to come over to me, and I don't want people to see that I accepted Christ, even though it's a good thing. So I left that day and accepted Christ in my car. I was like,
I love that.
I didn't want anybody to see me, so I just did it alone in my car on the way home. So for about a year, a little less than a year, the person I was living with, I was like, as I grew to know the Lord and read the Word, I was like, okay, I know this isn't right. We shouldn't be living together. We're not married. This can't keep going on. So it was to the point where we were living separate in the house. Well, as I grew in my faith, going to church and have a relationship, he didn't obviously want that, so he left. And so then I faced foreclosure on my house. I had to get roommates, but I was starting to build my relationship with the Lord, so I just started praying and trying to find a job. And I had my Mary Kay business, and there was a few times I'd go to appointments and I would pray before my appointment, because everyone's pray before you go to your appointment. And I'll be like, Lord, I need this amount of money to pay this bill so my electric doesn't get shut off, or I need this much to put gas in my car to get to work. And there were a few times my appointments were the exact dollar that I needed to pay my utility bill. So that was when it really just started hitting me wow, God, you just provided this exact amount of money that I need for this bill. So it was just stuff like that was happening. And I joined a young adults group at Grace, and I started serving in the children's ministry just to really get myself involved, and just over time, like building relationship. But in the beginning, like I was on fire for God. I was going to Bible study. I was going to church. Like I was serving in the kids ministry. I just was like had this strong desire, just like wanted to live for Him. And I'd say like before I became a Christian, I was very selfish, like all about me, my time. I grew up like, getting everything that I wanted, and but I was really quick to get angry. I was very impatient, very selfish. And after I accepted Christ, like things obviously don't change overnight, but I just had this fire for the Lord that I literally like was like, okay, I only need the most basic things: food, clothes, shelter, and like I don't need anything else, Lord. And I went from this like really selfish, wanting everything kind of person to just laying it all out and like not needing it. And so it just really just changed my heart. And some people like whoa, they started seeing it because I was a really materialistic person, and I just was like, I don't need that. I just need food, clothes, and a roof over my head, and that's all I need, and the Lord. So I was just like on fire. So it was about a year after I accepted Christ, I met my now husband. We were in young adults group. I was actually friends with his sister, and I didn't really know much about him. Like I just hung out there. I was a really shy person, so we hung out a lot. I never knew she had this older brother, and he started coming to the young adults group with his kids, and I didn't really know. It was right before Christmas. My friend, his sister started doing worship, leading worship for our young adults group, and he played guitar, so he started playing. And then he noticed me, and I didn't really pay attention because I was just like on fire for the Lord. Everything else was like, I had my blinders on. And so he would we'd make a joke. I said he would stalk me. And he came to Christmas Eve service. I invited my mom because she only came at Easter and Christmas. So I invited her to church with me, and then we were sitting with some of our young adults group, and she said, my husband, she was like talking to him at the time, she was like, what are you doing for Christmas Eve? And he was like, well, this is my first year alone, I don't have my kids. And she's like, oh, why don't you come to our Christmas Eve gathering with us? And I was like, Mom, I barely even know this person. Like, we go to young adults, but it had only been like maybe a month.
Oh, wow.
And yes, so she invited him along, and that's when I got to know him. He started playing on the worship team, and his kids would come to church, and I was serving in the children's ministry. And so 4 months later, we were engaged. 4 months after that, we were married, and we came back from our honeymoon, and we were expecting baby number 1.
Wow.
So it was a lot. It was good, and his previous relationship, he had gone through divorce after like 7 years of infidelity of his wife. And we kind of, our stories, like my past and me becoming a Christian, and his past of just stuff happening, and we kind of just started talking, and that's how we met and got engaged and married. And we courted through the whole process, like that whole time. And I was like, I don't want anything to hinder like my walk with the Lord. So we literally we didn't dance together, we didn't hold hands, we didn't do anything. And up until we got married, because I didn't want anything to get in the way of my walk with the Lord.
Wow.
So after we got married, there's things that happen, like you're newly married, you're navigating living together, and then there's kids involved that live with us full time. And then on top of a pregnancy, in the beginning, I was very sick. Couldn't get out of bed sick. But I had to go to the hospital and get fluids and stuff. I was pretty sick. So with new marriage, being a stepmom, and then being pregnant and sick, it started to take its toll. And where I say I was what I call a baby Christian, I was new. It was still kind of fresh. So I thought what I had was a good foundation, but I didn't. And it just started spiraling out of control. My stepchildren's mom pitted them against me, which caused issues in our marriage. And it went on until last year. So from about 2012 to last year, there was just a lot of tension, stress. She would tell her son to attack me. So there was times where I was nervous to be alone with them at the house, and then I had a baby, and then 2.5 years later we had another one. So my stepson, it got so bad we had to move him out with his mom, and because we were in fear of our new child getting hurt because of the way he was being. And at the time I didn't know it, but I was developing adrenal fatigue and thyroid issues, and just all the stress. I was living in fight or flight mode all day long, every day, and it just started taking its toll on my body. It started taking its toll on my marriage. I would seclude myself, and then my husband would seclude himself in certain ways, and we were living like roommates. We were living separate, just from dealing with all the stuff that was going on. It got so bad. My stepdaughter was running away for days at a time, and her mom would pick her up on Friday, allow her to run the streets, and knew where she was but not say, and then she'd be running away and we'd have to find her. And we had children's services at our door for false allegations, and the mom was doing anything she could to break it up. And of course we all know the devil does not want marriages to stay intact. And so we were trying to get help at church, but there was things going on there at church, and we just felt like we weren't really getting the help that we needed. And then we felt like people would look down on us because they didn't know the whole story. They only see a glimpse of what's really happening. So we weren't getting help. And so that was just making it worse. We were trying to do it on our own, and we were even trying to read the Bible and pray and still continue to go to church, but not reaching out for help from the church, just feeling like we were going to be judged or not get help. So that kind of was happening, not really getting help. So for all those years, we would kind of talk to people a little bit, but no one really knew the full extent of what was going on. And we didn't really know where to turn because we were worried about being judged, and the system doesn't help you. We tried to get help outside of church through the system, but there was no help. It was more about the child and the parents. They were giving more rights to our kids than they were us, and then their mom is not a believer, so and she wasn't a believer anymore. So it was just this constant I would read the word and pray and go to church and really be holding on to the Lord. Then it would just get so bad that I would push away, and then I would just go in a deep pit of sadness and God, why is all this happening? All this stuff to me, physically. I couldn't get out of bed. After I had my second daughter, I couldn't even get out of bed. By 10 a.m., I'd be sleeping again by 2, and then I had a toddler. Plus I was trying to work and part-time, and it just got so bad. It was just all the time this up and down roller coaster of I'd be in the Word, reading the Word, going to church, praying, and then things would just get really bad. It was just this roller coaster for a long time.
So let me ask you a question. So now you're kind of on the other side of that, and I know that our entire Rescued for Women is about messy situations being turned into a message of hope. And in that, I would say, as I'm listening to your story, that part of the message of hope is that your marriage survived, which is huge.
If I wouldn't have had the Lord, I definitely know we'd be divorced.
Yeah, that's huge.
Before I knew Jesus, I grew up, my parents were all the time oh, we're just gonna get a divorce. When things got rocky, the words, I'm leaving, we're getting a divorce. And there were times I would say that in our relationship, knowing that I know I took my vows. I'm in it for better, for worse. I'm here till death. But I would say, I can't do it anymore. I'm leaving. I can't do it. And I would leave for an hour, 2, 3 hours, come back. And so it made it worse on my relationship because you don't say that to someone who already went through
Right.
rocky relationships. So that would just like tear us apart even more.
But he was a believer,
Mm-hmm.
so it does make a huge
So you-
difference.
Yes, because you have two believers in this situation, and like you
Because you
said,
couldn't have fought that.
without
alone.
God, you
Yeah.
wouldn't have a marriage today.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I see in your story that I think is so important for anyone listening to hear is that, you know, we say all the time, like, God is all we need. And truly, at the end of the day, He is our foundation for everything, but He has also given us each other. And you had mentioned that you didn't seek help because you were afraid of judgment. And so I wonder what you would say to another woman out there going through the same thing. What would be your advice to them if they find themselves in your shoes?
Don't worry about what anyone thinks. Just reach out, talk to people, get help. Even if you don't feel comfortable, like if you had stuff going on at your church like we did, just find somewhere else. Just find maybe Christian counseling. There's things we just wish we would have done. And not worried about what other people thought, because no one sees what goes on behind closed doors. They only see like a small percentage of what really is happening.
What they're shown.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
I get that.
sure.
But that's huge.
Like we would put on our happy face and go to church and we serve in Awana and serve in children's ministry on worship team and stuff. You put on this face because you're worried about what other people are going to think, and then you're trying to do it alone and you can't.
Right. We need each other.
Yeah.
We need God and we need each other.
We need God first, but we need community too of other believers. And
Absolutely. And so often in churches, we, you know, I'm not saying air your dirty laundry to everyone, and I don't think that that's what
No,
you're implying
yeah.
at all, but to find those key people that you can trust, that you can open up to and just share it with, and hopefully, you know, get some help and advice. Sometimes it's just an ear, knowing somebody's there to sit with you, to pray with you, because they may not even be able to fix the situation, but they may be able to just offer you rest in, you know, in the sharing.
Because when it's you and your husband and you're in this yucky place, like cross-conversating to each other, it's like constantly hitting a brick wall because you're in it.
yeah, and
He's
a lot of
in it.
times we would get into a fight over it because we really didn't know what to do.
You didn't have a solution, and that, I've been there. I think we've all been, you know, in that place. But like the blended family, it's a lot. That's a lot of different influences, and especially, like, I commend you and your husband for both being believers, because if it was a one-sided situation, probably would have, like you said, ended different. But when you're constantly, if you're not having the kids and ex and different, that's a lot to navigate. So I commend you for being strong and pushing through that. But especially with your own children, how old, do you mind me asking?
They're 8 and 6.
Yours.
Yeah.
So
And then-
at that time, what were you dealing with as far as age range of your stepchildren?
Well, they were around actually the same ages as I was having
Your children.
my first one, and then when my second one was born, my oldest was then 2.5.
Man.
So
Wow.
they were about 8 and 10.
At the
So
time
young.
your kids were born.
Wow.
Yeah,
When
well,
you
they
were
were
your
about
first-
6 and 8, and then 8 and 10 after I had my second.
Okay. Wow.
That's so young to have that strong of a, and it is. I think moms need to hear that too, that are watching, that, you know, I had touched on this. It kind of brings back moments of mine with my girls, where it's like, that's not your ex doing, like, but it almost becomes your, you know, like in that situation. So you're dealing with two very young children that are very impressionable, but when they're with you, it's one way, and with her, it's another.
Yeah, and I mean, we still have, even though they haven't been there. Well, my stepson hasn't been with us for years because of everything. He actually was away at a treatment facility, but we still had to like go visit, and there was still stuff that was going on. And then with my stepdaughter, like we haven't seen either one of them in a year. One's away, 4 hours away, and one wants nothing to do with us because that side is very worldly and we're not. So just to say too, like, just in this last year, a lot of healing, a lot of reflecting, and just really being able to really get back to my relationship with the Lord all the time, every day, every like hour, every week, every month, just taking it one day at a time. Before I would just get upset very quickly, and now I'm just like, I've gotten to the point now where I can say, no matter what happens, like, God is still good, like, he still has a plan, there's still a purpose, and no matter what happens. And to be here now and say that, years prior, I would have never been able to say that. And so it's just, I've gotten to a point where it's just,
That's amazing.
no matter what happens,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
Like, God is still good.
Would you say your marriage is so much stronger?
Yeah, we're still working on it, but it's way stronger than
That's
it was
awesome.
even a year ago.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Back just this past December, my husband came to me on my daughter's 6th birthday, and he was like, we have had a lot of apologies to each other, things that we've done that hurt each other in the mess of all of it, and just healing and apologies and stuff. He came to me and was like, I'm sorry, because he said no more children because of all the mess, like, so he went and got fixed 3 years ago. So in December, on my daughter's 6th birthday, he came to me and he was like, I'm really sorry for what I did, because he went and did it without my permission. Like, I knew it was happening,
Yeah.
but he didn't have me saying it was okay. He was like, I would like to reverse it and have more children. So now I'm at the point where, okay, God, no matter what happens, new baby or not, or we've talked about adoption, if it doesn't work. And so I prayed for 3 years for him to have a change of heart. Like, I just figured we could have an adoption. And because I was like, oh, that door's closed. But when he came to me and said that, 2 people that I know just had it reversed. Like, right before he said that, I prayed for 3 years that he would just be open to more children. And so when he came to me, I was like, I had to pray for something for 3 years. And sometimes we think, like, we should say a prayer and it should just be answered. God heard us, it should just be answered. It doesn't happen that way. It happens in his timing.
Right.
And it's just
We
like,
all do think it's
no.
we're not in charge.
So for 3 years, I
But
was
you
just
didn't
like,
stop praying.
No.
That's awesome.
Because you had such a strong belief.
I was just like, God, if this is what you want, then, and even now, if it doesn't work, then there's a reason that door is closed.
That's
So.
beautiful.
But it took a
have
long
peace.
time
Yeah.
to get there.
It does.
But
And
it's
sometimes for you, you know, having that year of kind of being removed from some of the mess allows you to be, heal better. What would you say to the person who's still in the middle of the mess? Like what could you have done differently? Because hindsight's always 20/20, and you said get help, right? In your walk with God, if there's a believer out there that's, in the middle of it and she's just struggling to stay connected to God, what are some practical steps? Have you?
I wish I would have found someone who's further in their walk with the Lord than I was, someone who could come beside me and just talk it out with me, and just have that one person where when I needed that person to lift me up, when I couldn't do it myself, when there was days I just didn't want to open my Bible and I didn't want to pray, to have somebody come alongside me while it was all going on.
Like your role model.
Just
what
like
you were.
someone who,
Just that one person that you can pick up the phone and call or text, or and the funny thing is, as Christian women, I think often we don't realize that there's a woman next to us that would be so willing to
And
be
honored.
that for us,
Yeah.
and honored to be asked to be that for us. And we're so nervous and so ashamed and afraid to share our stories sometimes that we miss out on the beauty of what we could have. And so many women would just, would do it so willingly.
yeah,
So,
because I have 2 friends right now who I've been trying to help, and just be there for them, just text or a call away, and I'm just like, why didn't I just do that? But sometimes we just like get in our own way.
yes,
And so,
100% agree.
yeah.
I think there are so many women, and I do want to kind of emphasize on that, because that is what Julie was for me, in such an awful yuck. So it almost breaks my heart knowing that you didn't have someone, and not even that you might have not had someone, but just didn't feel comfortable enough to express that, reach out. Don't hold back. Like, don't have to do this alone. Like,
Yeah, I'm a really shy person. It takes me a lot to trust people, and so I just didn't have that person.
I love that you said that, because you're a really shy person and you are now sharing with the world your story.
It's amazing.
And so, you know, there are women watching tonight. If you're out there and you're thinking, I could never share my story, you could do it, and it could be used. I mean, there are women
when you
that need
asked
to
me,
hear.
you're like, I want to hear your story. And it was so funny because it was like, before I even knew what Rescued for Women was, I was like really thinking, I'm like, who could I help? Like, who can, I do help people like with my autoimmune condition, like how to like walk that. But I was just like, who could I help like through this? Like, especially during this time where we're not really meeting with other people. But yeah, and then you said something to me and I was like, oh my, like I was nervous and stuff, but I just, I knew I was like, someone out there could just use the help.
There's so many women deal with the blended family thing,
Right.
and the tug and pull and finding your place in it when they're not yours directly. I mean, it's a hard thing to juggle, and a new believer, and a new mother, and like that's heavy.
Yeah, it is.
That is
I
heavy.
can only imagine, because I was a new mom, blended family, right? We had babies quick, and we didn't have that. We had our blended family situation was, if there is a perfect one, it was pretty perfect. It was easy. It wasn't complicated. The most complicated thing was just knowing how to be a stepmom, you know, and do it well. And that was, you know, that came with enough weight and pressure to have what you had. I cannot imagine walking through that, but I know that there's somebody watching tonight that needed to hear you say your story out loud, because they're sitting there shamed and they're feeling alone and like they can't reach out. And what you've done is you've opened this door for that mom that's sitting there going, no one would ever think of me the same way, and they're scared. And you know what? You just gave them what they needed to be able to say, you know what, there's other women out there. And that's what Rescued for Women is all about. It's about us sharing our stories so that you know you are not alone. There is hope when you rely on God and when you trust in Him. And there's other women out there that are walking the same path, and they're here and willing to share and help you. So we hope that, you know, is there anything you want to add before we close up tonight?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate you being on. And we hope that you guys will join us the next time. Please do us a favor, like and subscribe to our channel, share it. And also, if you have a story that you'd like to share, we would love to hear your story.
Don't hesitate.
No, don't hesitate. Thank you again for being with us, and we will see you the next time. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
I was drowning in the water, but you came and pulled me up so I could breathe. I was hurting with all my problems, and all you did was forgive me, 'cause I